The room just stopped, you know, that hush that drops out of nowhere and makes silverware freeze mid-air. A 10-year-old boy in steel braces was standing beside a table that probably cost more than my monthly rent, and he looked straight at Mom and said, "Excuse me, would you dance with me for one song? In a place built to make people like me invisible." I took off my apron, folded it neat like I was putting down a shield, and I said yes. The piano player caught the cue and slid into something slow and honest. The manager materialized with his ironed smile. "Sir, control your son, this isn't a dance hall." And the father, Grant Ellison, the guy from magazine covers and airport TVs, told the kid to sit quiet, voice loaded like a threat. But the kid kept holding my hand, and I matched him step for step, squeak for squeak, letting him lead with those stubborn braces, while an entire dining room stared like we were breaking a law. 3 steps, that's all 3 imperfect steps that felt louder than the crystal. Then I thanked him like I was talking to a judge. "You did the leading, I just followed." And I went to pick up my apron, only to see the father stand face torn, between angry and grateful, asking for my name, and sliding me a card like a verdict. "My office tomorrow, 10 a.m. Yeah, that happened. The next morning I rode a too-fast elevator to a floor that smelled like glass and money receptionist eyes, asking what floor someone like me belongs on Ms. Kincaid, the assistant with the razor bob, walking me in with that tone that says I am being tolerated, not welcomed. Ellison faced the skyline like he owned weather, then turned and tried the oldest game in the book, the quiet pause designed to make you babble. But I grew up in rooms where if you talk first, you lose, so I let him sit in it. He asked about credentials, and I told him straight. Child development. Northwestern paused the masters to pay real bills, co-founded a little program called Step Forward. With my sister Jada, a gym with scuffed floors where kids with mobility challenges set the pace and we match them rather than shove them. And yeah, it's underfunded and one busted water heater from closing. Thank you for asking. He said he wanted to hire me for his son, not as a server, as a specialist. Best money, best structure, best experts, the works. And I felt the trap right there. The idea that you can purchase your way out of doing the harder parts of love, so I told him the price he couldn't afford. If you think your son's freedom is a line item, I'm not for sale, bring Noah to class Tuesday, 4 p.m. First session's free because trust is a risk, and I won't charge you for taking the first one. He reminded me with his eyes that he could end my job with a call. I reminded him with mine that I have survived worse than a schedule change, and I left that famous office with nothing but my name and the stubborn belief that dignity grows in rooms where people are allowed to lead themselves. I didn't know if he'd show, but 10 minutes past 4, a black SUV eased to our curb like the block might stain it. Noah climbed out first, adjusting his straps with the kind of shaky pride that breaks your chest open. And then Ellison followed in a sweater that probably had a publicist. Our space isn't pretty. String lights rescued from a wedding. A radiator that hisses like an uncle, with opinions, a mural with a blank corner we call the future wall. But the kids know it's theirs, a girl in a hot pink chair spinning deliberate circles, a boy with a carbon fiber leg tapping out a clap step pattern. He wrote himself the kind of scene that looks like chaos to people who think control equals care. Noah watched hungry and cautious. I greeted him like any other kid. "Want to try a walk and clap? You lead, I'll match." He glanced at his dad for permission. Old habit, the dad gave that tight little nod men use when yes tastes like no, and we got moving. Dr. Miriam Cho walked in 5 minutes later, cane topped with a brass bird, Queen Energy, a neuroscientist who retired from titles, but not from truth. And Ellison stood up so fast, his chair squeaked, "Dr. Cho, I've read your work." "Have you read the proposals you ignored last spring?" she asked. Not cruel, just factual, and he took the hit, because sometimes life stops letting you pretend. I told him what we measure. Follow first training consent in motion, kids choosing we matching brains, changing in ways that medicine forgets to budget for. And right then, the door opened for two local reporters I'd invited. Because if we're honest, money listens when cameras hum. He looked at me like I'd stolen his wallet. You used my son for this. And I walked him to the Polaroid wall, every kid with 3 lines under their name: first step, favorite song, last brave thing. Then I pointed to the blank square in the corner. That's for the 500 kids we could serve if this city decided to build what these families deserve. The music cut out in the gym, and the room fell still. Noah was centered, one hand on the rail, sweat on his hairline. He undid the strap on his left brace like he was defusing a bomb. Ellison moved to stop him. I laid a hand on his forearm and whispered, "Wait, watch." And that boy leaned into the fear face, folding and flattening in one breath, and took a step without full support, shaky and not pretty and perfect in the way that actually matters. The kids erupted. Jada cried, because she's the brave one. Dr. Cho tapped the brass bird twice like a benediction, and Ellison's hand rose like it wanted to wipe his eyes, but didn't dare a man caught between how he was taught to be and what his body was telling him now. The reporters asked their question. Presence here grants rejected any comment, and this was the moment, right the doorway where power chooses, and he could have bolted back to the marble or doubled down on being right. Instead, he did the thing men like him almost never do on camera. He said, "Here's the hardest part of my job, admitting when I'm wrong." And then he announced 5 years of funding and a permanent center on the South Side built with families run by us, without corporate strings, books, audited souls left alone. I won't lie, my knees went loose. I grabbed the rail like a boxer grabs the ropes, because that wasn't charity. That was a crack in a wall that has been rock solid my whole life. Construction is noisy and honest. 3 months later, I wore a hard hat and argued about the important little things. Rails wide enough for a grandma and a worried parent, floors soft enough to forgive a fall, a quiet corner where tired fathers can swallow their pride without an audience. And Ellison kept showing up with a small black notebook where he wrote down words like agency and apology. He read papers at night. He fired a therapist who treated Noah like a checklist. He asked me why I never accepted an apology, and I told him because he never actually said the words. And to his credit, he nodded like that sentence landed where it needed to. Opening day tasted like lemonade and sawdust. Kids everywhere, one golden retriever named Butter making the rounds, and Noah led a tiny routine with 3 friends, nothing fancy. A pattern they wrote together, one light brace on his left leg, and a smile that made every old forecast look like lazy math. I stood beside Ellison as the reporter asked how it felt to have been wrong in public and right in the long run, and he said, proud not of what he overcame, of what he created for others. And for the first time, his voice sounded like a man learning to be around, rather than a man trying to control the air. After the balloons sagged and the coffee cooled, we met at the future wall, where new photos had already crept into the blank, and he finally said the word apology, not as a performance, just as a sentence. Thank you for teaching me to follow. And I told him straight, I taught you to listen. Noah taught you to follow. My job was to make space and hold the line. Now here's the part people love to argue about. Did I manipulate a rich man with a camera, or did I hold up a mirror and ask him to walk toward what he saw? When the outcome is 500 kids getting a room that bends toward them instead of away, what do you call that? Strategy, survival, justice, all of the above. You know what I mean? 2 weeks after the ribbon, a foundation board member tried to attach strings, and I told them I'd walk last month, a hospital admin. called our methods soft, and then watched a child take a self-led step that made his mouth go quiet yesterday. Mr. Pierce left me a voicemail saying there was an opening if I wanted my old job back, because they were short on staff who know how to handle upscale clientele. And I laughed so hard I had to sit down because I know my value now, and it doesn't come with an apron. Noah still comes twice a week. He brings me songs I pretend to dislike because it keeps us honest. Sometimes he falls and swears under his breath, and then apologizes. And I tell him, don't you dare say sorry for trying something. Your body is still learning. Ellison sits in the corner with that notebook. A guy doing homework assigned by his heart. And once he asked if I'd teach his leadership team what it means to follow, and I said sure. But bring them here because the only skyline that matters is the one these kids build one small, stubborn step at a time. If you're still with me, tell me what you felt and what you saw. Was I right to invite the cameras, or did I cross a line? Is it manipulation when the result is dignity funded rather than postponed? Have you watched someone change their mind in public and wondered if it was real or PR? Drop your take in the comments. Push back. If you disagree, share a first step you witnessed that changed your view of what's possible. And if this story meant something to you, tell me where you're watching from and pass it on, because the more we say these things out loud, the more those blank corners on our walls fill up with faces who finally got the room they deserved.